All right, welcome back to another episode of Wealth Building for Dummies. My name is Kyle Demian. We have Renji Matthew, our other host here as well. Today we're going to be talking about why C and D students make better entrepreneurs than A and B. Now, this isn't my thoughts. This is apparently, like anything, from a study that somebody posted about on TikTok. And I feel like I find it to be true. I would actually tend to believe it. And Renji, I don't know if we've ever even talked about this, but I'm curious, you being an entrepreneur, like what kind of grades did you get in school?
I think so. If we're talking about high school, I didn't actually focus on studies at all. I felt like it was mostly I did make A through C's, I think,
Okay.
but most of the time it was A's, B's. So in our culture, I'm Indian from India. In our culture, education is really important. So I think the only time I actually spent time studying was when I was getting a C or below, and I was like, okay, let me get the grade up to a B at least, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I only had that once, and I don't know what I took AP history or something like that once, and I was like, oh crap, I'm failing this class, so I studied enough to get up to a C, and then I was like, okay, I'm fine now. So,
Man.
and then college, it was I think mostly. Um, College is where I really had to study, and at that point, it was kind of similar though. I was lazy, and I was like, okay, I just need a C or higher to pass and stuff like that. Um, and I had to drop classes because I was about to fail because I didn't learn my lesson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Funny.
but yeah, how about you?
So throughout high school, education was very important in our family too. So I always had A's and B's. Like that was a standard
Mhm.
that I needed to meet to get rewarded and to have to be able to play sports and so forth and so on. So we were held to the standard that we get A's and B's. If you're getting anything below that, you're not working hard enough, or we got to figure out how to
Yeah.
get you to the honor roll. So that was always something that we pushed for, and we were rewarded actually. My I remember my grandparents used to pay us. Um, I don't know, $5 or $10 for every A we would get. If we had a B, he would pay us like $2, and if it was a C or less, we wouldn't get any money. So, like for example, we were financially rewarded
Yeah.
in junior high and high school, and it was like, hey, we get A's and B's, and you'll get money for it. Anything else, you don't deserve any money. So, I think it's funny that seeing and hearing the study, I still agree with it, and I believe it. It makes sense to me, and just from the standpoint of like also, you mentioned being lazy in school, and I think that's a lot of what it is. Because in school, you get your homework. Most of our homeworks, I feel like if as long as you turn your homework in time, homework was pretty easy because you're going along with it in your class, and you could always get help from the teacher, or have help from friends, or if you wanted to, you could probably cheat off your friends. I mean, being honest, and get an A or a B. But I believe like if you were getting C's, D's, or F's, it probably came down to just being lazy, or, not
Right.
being responsible for turning your homework in on time. And then of course testing. And I'm a firm believer as well that, yeah, the people that got C's and D's, um, they were kind of thinking outside the box. They wanted to do their own thing. They didn't like being, in a system where they had to follow by someone else's rules. And a lot of the times, when you get out into the real world and you become an entrepreneur, um, all bets are off. All limits are off. You're on your own. You need to think outside of the box.
Yep.
You need to be creative. The laziness part, I guess, won't really get you there. Because I've seen it, in our businesses that we've done together. People have come in with desires, dreams, goals. They want to reach the next level, but they never make it. They never get there. And some actually fall out of the industry, and they got to go do something else. Some of them have to go back
Right.
to being an employee. And because a lot of that comes down to just simply discipline and having responsibility over yourself, running
Yep.
your own business, like you are your own boss. You have to clock into yourself. You have to,
Yep.
you have to be the one that goes and puts in the work, and funny enough, at the time of this recording, it's the day before Thanksgiving. And we just literally talked about this. I was like, Renji, man, I don't want to work today. But I'm going to do the work and I'm going to treat it like as if I'm at a job, and I'm going to work till 5 o'clock, and then I'm going to clock out and then be able to start enjoying some time with my family. And a lot of the times that's what it's like. People want to be their own boss until they realize they don't have anybody over their shoulder telling them what they need to do on a day in and day out basis. So anything to add on to that, or any thoughts that you have, Renji?
No, yeah, you're so right. I think when I first got into doing anything, that was my problem too. I was like, oh, I'm my own boss. I can take my time, but you're not going to make any money because you got to work to make the money. So, like you said, Kyle, like
Yeah.
you got to work as if you're in a job, even though you're your own boss, you're your own business. If you don't have that discipline, because after getting into doing any type of business is when my discipline grew. Because before that, I didn't really have discipline. I just did things when I felt like doing it and stuff like that. And school, especially high school and lower, didn't seem too hard for me because I didn't take any honors classes until the very end. And even that, like, if it got too hard, I was like, yeah, I could do regular classes or whatever. But when you
Yeah.
get to into the entrepreneurial side of things, if you don't set those disciplines and goals, you're not, and I mean, if you don't set goals, you're not going to get anywhere first off. But if you set goals, if you're not disciplined, you're not going to get to those goals either. So a lot of times what we see is no matter what industry it is in, when people don't get to first off, they don't set goals. And if they do set goals, if they're not setting disciplines, they're not going to get to those goals and they quit easily and they get out of whatever it is real fast, But one thing I remember, one thing someone said to me once, I hear a lot of parents say, oh, I would do anything for my kids, but they're not willing to get up early on a day to
Mm.
work on their business or whatever. They just hit the snooze button and then they just go to sleep. But if you're willing to do anything for your kid, why not get up and work your business so you can be financially free? You can be available for them when they need you instead of being stuck at work, which is one of the reasons I got into doing real estate was my first entrepreneur journey. And I worked as a nurse 12-hour shifts, and I would come home and work on stuff, or I would get up, like if I worked day shift, I would have to get to work at 7, so I would get up at 4 in the morning, work on stuff, different things like that before I would get ready to go to work, because otherwise I couldn't get time to work on anything. And
Yeah.
if I didn't make that time, I was never going to be an entrepreneur. And one thing about myself was I missed out on my son's growth for the first couple of years because I was working so many hours at the hospitals and stuff like that. So that's how I got into doing into my entrepreneurial journey. But now, yes, there's good and bad days, but I can deal with it a lot better because I have more time with family. I have the freedom to do what I want. But if you don't set those disciplines, those freedoms are not going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good way of putting it and looking at it, because I have a similar background where I was working at a car dealership and we were open just about every
Yeah.
day of the year except for Christmas and I think Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. I think those were like the only 3 days we were ever closed. And not only that, but like Mondays and Thursdays, we worked 9 to 9. Saturdays, we worked 9 to 6. Sundays, we were open, but we would have to come in every other Sunday. So it's like, it's positions like that and opportunities like that where once you do it and you realize, like, hey, if I'm willing, this was my aha moment. If I'm willing to work that amount of hours for someone else, or if others are willing to work that amount of hours for someone else in a sales capacity, in their job, why not do that same exact thing for yourself and to build something that you're going to be able to own, control, and grow and scale? A lot of people find themselves in jobs where they just don't have an opportunity to grow and scale, but they'll still work for them 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week. And that's where I found myself. So I took that same exact approach. If I'm willing to work 60 hours a week for somebody else, I better be willing to do that for myself, and especially when I'm building my own business. And Renji, when you were going to college, were you studying then to be a nurse, or did you have another path you went down? It was for nursing?
Yeah, yeah, it was
Okay.
nursing. And something made me think when you were talking about the what you just said. Uh, we still have days where we don't want to work, right?
Oh,
But
every day. No.
yeah, every day, yeah, for sure. And but that's where having a why matters. What is your why?
Yeah.
Is your why big enough? One of the books that I've read so many books in the past, so one book that made me get up off my butt and do stuff, entrepreneurial wise, was Chase the Lion. Such a good book. It talks about a biblical character who went into the dip. Went. Sorry, start over. uh, it talks about a biblical character that went into a pit on a snowy day to fight a lion. And the Mr. Batterson, the author of the book, he likens the lion to fear, likens the lion to fear of your dreams and all that stuff, you know. And most people, when they face a fear of starting a business, face a fear of writing a book, face a fear of starting a podcast, whatever it may be, most people will stop and turn back. But in the book, he's talking about the character that went into the pit and fought that lion and conquered that battle. And when I read that book, I was like, man, I'm not doing what, like, I don't have a big enough why. That book talks about if
Hmm.
your why is not big enough to scare you, it's not big enough. So, what is your why? Is your why big enough to fight for? Is your why big enough to go into a pit and fight a lion? Or is it something you're just going to give up on and hit the snooze button on? So
Hmm.
that why, if it's not there and if it's not strong enough, if it's not big enough to where you can't conquer it by yourself, then that's gonna make you give up and be like, oh, I don't want to work today.
Absolutely. Is it big enough to have you working on the day before Thanksgiving when all you can think about is eating food and watching football?
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Um, so I'm curious your thoughts. I would say college is necessary if you want to go down the path, because entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. But
no,
if you want to go down the path where you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a teacher, obviously any of those career paths, you need education. Um, business, entrepreneurship. I guess if you want to be like a CEO of a company, although nowadays I think it's Google and or maybe Apple. They're starting to remove the requirements of having a college degree. I don't remember where I saw that or heard that, but regardless, I think if you want to start and run your own business, college is not necessary. And I think the biggest reason is just through learning on your own. Getting a mentor, following someone that's in the place that you want to be, and just following them, asking them for advice. If they have training, diving into their training, learning from them, getting into masterminds, getting around like-minded people that are in places you want to be. And you're going to learn a lot more through that, through following people on social media, through YouTube University, just actually going through the motions though, and just starting your own business and diving in. And back to being, C and D students versus A and B. A mentor of ours that we share, Will Moneyman Myers, he has talked to us multiple times where I think we're on the call together, and he's like, you guys are too smart. You're overthinking it. Just do the action. Just take the steps. Just dive in. Fail. Take those failures and turn them into lessons. And that's how you're going to grow and be able to build a business and be an entrepreneur. So that's are you like in the same boat with as far as like education, or do you have different thoughts?
yeah, no, exactly. Like there are professions you have to have an education for. I'm not gonna have a surgeon. operate on me if you didn't go to school and have
Good
the
point.
hours of clinical hours
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But there is, like you said, there's a lot of things you can teach yourself. And something like I mentioned before I read that book, I was doing a lot of research. I was learning a lot of things. I spent some money on courses and stuff like that too, but I never took action.
Mhm.
Once you take action, oh, we've lost thousands of dollars on mistakes I've made. But those are not failures unless you don't learn from them. If you
Mhm.
learn from those mistakes, you're not going to make those same mistakes again. So in that sense, it's not a failure. So we've lost so much money and so many entrepreneurial ideas that I went after, but each of those has helped me to become the man I am today because I've learned from all those mistakes. The biggest thing I would say is don't quit. If God's put that in your mind of you being an entrepreneur, you having a big why and you approaching that why, don't quit because you'll get there. It's just a matter of how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to keep fighting that line until you get to your victory, or are you wanting to give up? You know, how big is your why? So when it comes to that, like Kyle mentioned earlier, paying for a mentorship program or paying for joining a mastermind, if you take that as an education, like what you would pay for a college. Let's say you spend $100,000 for your college degree. You come out and you're starting with that debt or whatever. You're working, you have to pay that off. Take that same mindset and spending that money into a mentorship program or something where you're trying to get a new skill or learning something that you could do to get into the side of owning your own business. Yes, it might look like you spend money up front, but what is the cost of that? It's education. You're trying to learn what you do. Or you could take that same amount of money and go make the mistakes and learn from that too. In each scenario, you're spending money up front to learn something, right?
Yeah.
So it's your goal is to figure out which path you want to go. Do you want to learn from your mistakes or learn from other entrepreneurs that have done it so you don't make those same mistakes? That will probably
Yeah.
cost you a lot less, even though it might seem like a big price up front. It might be less over time because if you learn from other people's mistakes, you could start out a lot more successful than where they were.
Mhm.
So you want to see where what price you're willing to pay to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. And not only the monetary cost, but the time cost.
Yep.
People go to school for 4, 6, 8 years, and what is it, 8 years to become a doctor, get your PhD, probably 8 to 10. I don't even
It's
know.
longer because if they specialize, it's even longer. Yeah.
So even longer. So
Yeah.
if people are willing to do that to become a doctor, to have a PhD, you've got to take that same mindset into business too. You're not going to
Yep.
be great at business in year one. Just like in
Yep.
college, if you were going to school to be a doctor, you're not going to be a doctor in year one either. It
Yep.
takes time. You got to build skills. You got to learn how to talk to people. You got to learn sales, maybe marketing,
Yep.
building a business, hiring people. There's a lot of different aspects when it comes to building a business. But um,
Yep.
that's what they call it, the school of hard knocks, for a reason, because you're still going to school, you're still paying your dues.
Yeah.
It's either you could pay it to the University of X, or you can pay it to yourself in building a business and the school of
Yep.
hard knocks. So Reggie,
Yep.
anything you want to say to wrap us up?
No, something made me think when you were talking was uh, even doctors that go to school for 20 years or whatever, they have a why, right? So if they didn't have that why, they wouldn't make their self want to go through school for that long. So no matter what you
Yeah.
pursue, make sure your why is big enough, because even if you're not going the entrepreneurial route, just make sure you have a goal. And a lot of people that we've met, they make their goal as making money. That's You could still make a lot of money if that's your goal. But if you want your why and your goals to be even better, it has to be something more than money. So yeah, doctor, whatever route you go, entrepreneurial route, if you don't have a big enough why, you're not going to stick to it. I'll end
100%.
it there.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This was another episode of Wealth Building for Dummies. And as always, please leave us a like, leave us a review or a comment, tell us how we can improve, leave any questions that, you'd want us to answer. And maybe we'll make a full podcast or a show about that. So thank you as always for tuning in.
See
And
you
until
guys.
next time.